Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time you're watching this podcast. This podcast series we call Race, Culture, in the Church. Race, Culture, in the Church. And as I like to introduce every time, what this series is about, which started 1 week after the murder of George Floyd, it's entering into those spaces of race, of culture, and the church. So think of it like a Venn diagram with three circles. And if we get all three overlapping, we've done an incredible job. 2 out of 3 is not bad. So today, I think we've hit a new high. I am pleased, I am happy to welcome into this space the mayor of this fine city, Sacramento, Mayor Darrell Steinberg. Welcome, Mayor.
Pastor, it's an honor.
It's our honor. So I've got a lot of questions. I guarantee you that I will run out of time. But
I'll try not to be long-winded here.
It doesn't matter. I still whatever time we have. I guess I have to kind of qualify. I usually extract a concession from folks. It's like, okay, you got to promise to come back. You're the mayor. You've got a lot of folks begging on your time. So if it fits within your schedule, we'd love to have you back. So, but right now we'll give it our best shot. Again, the Cracker Jack research team that we have here, which is me. I've scraped this information off the city website, so if it's wrong, blame city staff. That's you blame city staff.
Never.
Well, you're a better person than I am. I'd blame somebody. You've been mayor since 2016. 2016, that's a good run. And it says you have served the people of Sacramento for 25 years and counting, guided the city through an unprecedented pandemic, long overdue reckoning around race and equity. We'll get into that. Leader of big city mayors, you're dealing with easy tasks like homelessness, not. And one of the things that you've highlighted also are the negotiated agreement with UC Davis and Aggie Square. We'd like to get into that. But what I thought was really towards the end of your bio that's posted, it says that you were the president of the Tahoe Park Neighborhood Association. So was that the jumping off point for Mayor Steinberg today?
In a way it was. I mean, I came to Sacramento after graduating law school at the University of California, Davis in 1984, and was a young man who did not know Sacramento well, but knew that I wanted to get involved and engaged, and immediately found this city to be most welcoming.
Where was home before Sacramento?
I grew up in the Bay Area, on the Bay Area Peninsula.
Okay.
Millbrae, California.
I know where that is.
And right where the airport is. And
yep.
Left age 17 and was a student at UC Berkeley for a couple of years, transferred to UCLA and got my undergraduate degree in economics at UCLA. And then I was on the fast track and went straight to law school at UC Davis. And it was very fortuitous because I could have gone to law school in San Francisco at UC Hastings and made the choice to go to Davis. And I liked the campus environment, but that's what led me to Sacramento and had nothing but incredible opportunity.
So you were a relative puppy. You're 17, but what's different about Sacramento than Millbrae? One, and did you know you wanted to get into community service?
I would say I grew up in a very, very different era. I graduated high school in 1977. I'm 63 years old. The year before the famous or infamous, depending on your opinion, Proposition 13 passed in California. Proposition 13 was that limitation on property taxes, which there was some merit to it, but it had a dramatic and in some ways negative impact on the ability of cities and the public sector to provide those services to young people that really matter. When I grew up middle class, not in a very diverse community at the time. Millbrae was not that. But it was a community that provided for its young people.
Working class.
For me, it was sports. You know, it was baseball, football, basketball, depending upon the season, and then tennis. And my first job was as a rec leader, and the library was always open. And I felt enveloped by the community. I often joke I could not have gotten in trouble because I never had the time to, even if I wanted to. What happened then in 1978 in California with the passage of that proposition, and for many decades following, is that the reality changed for young people. That basic foundation that I had, the open rec center, the ability to participate in any constructive activity that I wanted, was not there for many young people, especially young people from more disadvantaged communities. And so I got into public life in 1992 with a vow that I wanted to bring back some of those opportunities for young people that I benefited from. Because I always say that I learned all my life lessons as a kid, right? That old book, whatever it is, everything I know I learned in kindergarten, kind of true. You know, when you play sports, and sports isn't the only way, you'll learn about disappointment. You'll learn about overcoming adversity. You'll learn about hard work and discipline. You'll learn about teamwork. And when I got into public life, the after-school programs had largely been decimated due to various recessions. Kids did not have those same after-school weekend opportunities, except where the heroic nonprofits would step up. The cities did what they could. And so my motivation has always been for these past 30 plus years to make sure that government did not take over anything, but was the catalyst and direct investor in what builds community and what creates opportunities, especially for young people.
Well,
and that has guided me.
You're using some of my, those are I won't call them bear traps, but when you mention the word like community, that is, that's a go-to word for me. So since you brought it up, give me Mayor Steinberg, give me a Darrell Steinberg graduate from UCLA definition of community, and give me a definition and let me know if that definition has changed to today. What is community?
My experience is different maybe from the way I've always seen the definition. My experience, I did not grow up disadvantaged. And so, and I never took for granted what I got, and I wasn't wealthy, but I did not see as a young person, people and communities who did not have what I had. So how did I turn out the way that I turned out?
Well, that's an interesting, that right there, boy, I'm gonna go down a rabbit trail again.
That's okay.
That you have a shaped worldview in terms of community. Was that something you evolved? Was that something that your parents, your community?
Well, let's talk about faith, because I come from the Jewish faith.
Okay.
And common to all of our faiths is the idea that it is your responsibility to give to others and to use your voice and your whatever abilities you have to stand up for people who may not have the same opportunities that you have. I was taught that from a very young age, and my faith taught that to me. I'm not a very religious person in the formal sense, but my article of faith is that we have a responsibility to give back to other people. And it's not exclusive, obviously, to the Jewish faith, but it's, you know, when you think about the history of the Jewish people and how much suffering there has been, you can't help but have a strong feeling and a lot of heart for the underdog, for people who are being discriminated against, for people who are being set aside, for people who do not have the same chances. And so I'll bring it forward, though, if you want, to 2023 as the years have marched by, because you asked my definition of community. And it really is sort of embedded in a great challenge in our community, in our city today. And it goes to the heart of what should a city be about? There's a definition of city government that says the city ought to be providing the basic services, police and fire services. We ought to provide some smattering of youth activities through our city recreation program. and that we ought to be, doing the basics, obviously providing the utilities and the things that make a city
Fill
run.
the potholes.
Right. And by the way, that is definitely part of what a city has to do. And if you don't do that well, the rest of it doesn't really matter. But the real debate today, and where I hope my mayorship has made a difference, is to say that in order to create genuine opportunity in all our communities, that government must be more. Government has a direct role in investing in the economic future of our communities, especially those that have been the victims, people in communities that have been the victims of redlining and discrimination. That we have a direct role in investing in small businesses. We have a direct role in improving the quality of life and the physical appearance of our sometimes forgotten commercial corridors. That we have a responsibility to invest in our community-based organizations who provide direct services to children and families. That we have an obligation to invest in affordable housing and to alleviate homelessness. These are things that have not been traditional functions of a modern city, certainly not Sacramento. And so the tension, and I call it creative tension, because I don't think tension is a bad thing.
No.
Is how much with the limited dollars that we have can we invest externally in our communities versus how much do we invest in the important city organization that is necessary to provide the services. And I've sort of pushed very hard for much more direct community investment during my time as mayor. Hopefully not to the detriment of the city organization. I don't think so. But when we put money into Aggie Square or into an affordable housing trust fund, or we pass Measure L, which is the new youth initiative that set aside 40% of the cannabis revenue specifically for additional youth investments, those are statements that we want to make sure that over the long haul, that there is a real balance in terms of how we spend the taxpayer dollars. I want it spent on a strong city organization. I also want it spent directly in our communities.
I don't want to go down the path of strong mayor and but let me just say the diversity of our city, and Sacramento has been, highlighted by Forbes and different magazines, that Sacramento is one of the most, if not the most diverse major city in the country. Diversity is our strength. And if you look at our website, that's one of the hallmarks that I promote, even here with our community of faith, City Church, being a diverse community, a reflection of the community, both in terms of our congregation, but also being able to have various voices. So diversity is our strength. Diversity can also be a huge challenge because, much like a kaleidoscope, if I hand it to you, you twist the little tube, you see a different picture. You pass it on to the next person, they see a different picture. So the portrait that you're painting in terms of investment in those things that are not potholes, well, one man's investment is the next man's waste of money.
I don't know if you're talking about diversity as much as you're talking about democracy. Because democracy itself is messy,
isn't it?
And there are, but it's a mess that we all embrace in a way. Because
what's the best alternative?
Done right, it can lead to tremendous results. So in our city, because you mentioned strong mayor, and of course I'm not ashamed to talk about my wins as well as my losses. My one loss in public life over 30 years is taking the measure to the Sacramento voters in 2020 to change the system to so-called strong mayor. The term is unfortunate,
I understand.
But it was more of an executive mayor. Kevin Johnson, my predecessor, tried it as well. We both came up short. And what I think is that it speaks to the ambivalence of the voters here in Sacramento. But I would challenge the voters long past my tenure here, because I will not be mayor forever.
No?
No. The fifth term is probably out of the question at this point. To think through over time what it is you want. Because here's the truth. This what I call new city, old city debate that we just talked about, I don't think has as much of a chance to be the new city without a change in our city governance over the long haul. And look at Howard Chan as the city manager, and I've said this always, I could not ask for a better partner as a city manager under this form of government. And yet the form of government, I do think, inhibits the kind of progress that people say they want on the one hand. Because without an elected accountable executive, you don't have the risk-taking, and you don't have you don't have as much ability to move progressive change, depending how you define progressive. I define it as community building, progressive change as quickly and effectively as possible. Our system of government in Sacramento is too divided, and we overcome through a lot of work and a lot of goodwill, but it could be better and it could be faster. But that's because the people are ambivalent. On the one hand, the people say, we want a cosmopolitan city. We want more amenities. We want more art and culture and sports and the waterfront, and we want more progress. On the other hand, people say, well, God, we're a lovely city of tree-lined neighborhoods, and how about slowing down a little bit here and let us just be? And I think that conflict plays out in sometimes our system of governance, but also in the way the voters have looked at changing the charter over time. I'm not going to be leading that effort. I tried. But for the long term in the city, I do think that you get what you want in terms of progress. If we want more consistent investment in our communities, if we want a more consistent economic development finance strategy, if we want more partnership with the community around youth and affordable housing, I think you need more executive, accountable, elected leadership.
One of the conversations I had with a former council member, Jay Chenier, I said, so Jay, just look out on the horizon. What are the three biggest issues? He said, homelessness. Those are the three biggest issues.
Which one was first?
Homelessness.
Oh, okay.
He just repeated himself.
Yes.
I say that both to invite you into that space to speak to that, but also would change in city governance would it affect change more quickly?
Yes. Yes, it would. But let me talk about homelessness for a moment, because it is certainly the issue that dominates not just my agenda, but the agenda of every big city mayor in the state of California.
I shared, let me just say this, Mr. Mayor, I shared with both Chief Lester and former Chief Hahn, I said, we are right on, we as a community, as Sacramentans, we're right on that edge of saying, I'll put words in the average Sacramentan, whoever that is, I did care about homelessness and homeless people, but right now, I've had it. Just get them off the street.
Yes, that's the way a lot of people feel. And yet the question is, how do we get people off the street in a way that is effective and humane? And that's what we have answered. Now, here's something that your listenership may...
You're assuming people really... Well, I mean, it's like, do they really care? I mean, it goes back to community and how... That's why I spent the time with your worldview and how it was shaped. And if we're not careful, folks can reach a point of, I don't care anymore.
Well, that's dangerous.
To say the least.
And we have to continue to care, okay? I understand the frustration, but here's what your listeners may not know, and yet we've posted this on every blog. We've said it till,
the cows come home.
Till the cows come home. But it doesn't really penetrate, in part because of what people see and experience on the street. And here's a fact. Since I became mayor, the city and the county together have gotten over 17,000 people from unsheltered status within the city and county of Sacramento, mostly in the city, from the streets to being permanently housed. Over 17,000. When I started as mayor, the city contracted for and funded less than 100 shelter beds every single night. We're now up to over 1,100 every night. So if I just said that and you were from out of town, you'd say, wow, that's impressive. I sometimes joke, it's only a joke, we should have a parade to celebrate that. And yet we won't have a parade for the obvious reasons, because when people see that the problem in gross numbers has actually grown larger despite those 17,000 people off the street, they say, oh my God, why isn't it better? Well, here's the truth. More people are becoming homeless and faster than we can get people off the streets, because we've succeeded in getting people off the streets. Now, it's not enough. So it tells you that, number one, we have a housing crisis and a housing affordability crisis, because there's a lot of people living with mental illness and or drug issues that were housed, but living in very fragile states, who are now unhoused with those same underlying problems. Secondly, where I have come to on this is a recognition that the city, and this is old city, new city again, that the city cannot do this alone. Mm-hmm. The theme over the last couple of years, last year or two, is that, oh my, we need a stronger partnership with the county of Sacramento than we have ever had before. Because the county is the provider of health and human services. They do mental health. The city does not. If I've made a mistake as mayor, and I've made more than one or two, is that when I became mayor, and even when I ran, I set an expectation, I think, based on my experience in the state legislature, state senate. I'm the author of California's Millionaire's Tax, the Mental Health Services Act, that the city itself could move this needle. Well, I've done everything I said I would do. I brought that money forward. We've gotten 17,000 people off the streets. But the problem is worse. Here's my new hope. After years of struggle, we now have a formal and legally binding partnership agreement with the county. On paper, it's profound, because it requires the city and county together to put 50 new encampment outreach workers out on the streets of Sacramento, 10 teams, 20 encampments every month collectively, and to diagnose people with trained mental health clinicians on the streets. And then the county, the first of its kind in the country that I know of, has a legal obligation to do whatever it takes to add as many wraparound service slots as are necessary to help get those people off the streets. And that includes shelter, and that includes housing. And so we now are going to double, redouble, quadruple our efforts together, as opposed to trying to do it separately, as we largely did in the first years of my mayorship.
Two things then. I heard today, right before the recording, today's recording, that I guess there were 100 shelter beds over at Power Inn and Florin that I guess is being postponed. It's
not occupied yet. Yeah, it's a county project.
Correct. That's one. But I guess under the heading of I say risk taking, the whole issue of Section 8 vouchers, and that seems like low-hanging fruit. That just seems like there's opportunity there. But the folks that I have spoken to that are involved in the process, they're not the golden ticket you think they are. That you can have a Section 8 voucher, but you may not get a spot to live with that voucher.
So the Section 8 program is a very successful program, but it depends on housing supply, because a voucher without a housing unit is a piece of paper. And so we've tried. I know that our Housing and Redevelopment Agency, SHRA, has offered significant bonuses, so to speak, to landlords to take Section 8 vouchers. Mm-hmm. We have the KIND project in South Sacramento that is going to an upfront agreement to bring in people who have vouchers. But we need more units in order for the vouchers to be able to be put to work.
It's more than anecdotal. I hear you. I do hear you, Mr. Mayor. But I have also heard from folks that have had the vouchers and there's been openings and then the openings evaporate.
Well, is there discrimination? You better believe it. And is that wrong? Absolutely. Is it illegal? Yes, it is. But like everything else, it's a matter of being able to enforce that when it occurs. But there's no question that the landlord community as a whole is less likely to want to rent to somebody who holds a voucher than somebody who doesn't. And we've got to just continue to work with that community to fight through that.
So this goes back to, again, I wrote it down, risk-taking,
Yes.
that you spoke of, and community writ large, and looking beyond what's in it for me immediately. But we all want the benefit, whoever we are, we all want the benefit of a whole, a healthy community. But when it comes to, okay, this is what it's going to require of you or you or you individually, maybe not.
Well, this is the great challenge, not just in our city, but in society. Are we going to be a community that emphasizes we more than I? And I will tell you that
the answer is?
Well, the answer is sometimes we, but not enough. And I do think in our Sacramento, this is, again, one of the great challenges and opportunities with growth. And that is for the stakeholders, the powerful interests, and they're on all sides, to emphasize the we a lot more than the I. Now, we say with our business community, we've got a lot of strength, especially the business improvement districts that really just work their hearts out on behalf of the small businesses, mostly small businesses.
Shout out to Oak Park Business Association here.
Absolutely. All of them, from the downtown to every neighborhood, mostly in the city. But I do think when you look at the history of Sacramento, that this grew up as a development town. And development is very individualistic. You go get that entitlement. It's mostly man for himself. Now, fortunately, more women. And I think we don't have as much of a collective ethos when it comes to our stakeholder community as we need. Too many important questions are delegated to one special interest or another when it comes to a ballot measure, when it comes to a key question before the community. And I do think as we grow physically, as we grow culturally, as we grow economically, as we continue to grow and pride ourselves on our diversity, that we also have to grow as civic leaders. And that's all of us. Like I said, I've made my mistakes, and I learn as I go, but it's all of us. There needs to be a lot more we and significantly less I.
Well, Mayor, I said up front that we'd run out of time, and
let's keep going.
I haven't even dealt with the issues that I want to, but I also want to make sure that we have viewers for the next podcast, too.
Well, then you know what that means?
What does that mean?
I need to come back.
Yes, sir, you do.
So the answer is yes. See?
Mayor Darrell
Maybe
Steinberg.
Tomorrow.
Well, you need to talk to your staff then. Mayor Darrell Steinberg, thank you so very much for entering into this space. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Pastor.